morning. I'm all good. All good. Obviously, really good win this past week. I wait on the latecomers. No excuses. But really good win this past week. Really good overall team performance. Defensively speaking, to go out there and hold a team to 6 points is not easy. But to be able to do that with a team with the weapons that this team had, I was very proud of the way that the men started the game, and very proud of the way the men ended the game. And we're going to continue to look at certain things in our defense and try to improve each week. Here's what I would say. I know each week, and sometimes this is a negative connotation. It has nothing to do with the team. That each week, man, a lot of these teams are nameless, faceless to us. And it has nothing to do with the team again. This has everything to do with us because we know right now we're in the middle of November, and we know what that means. And the one thing I told you, men and women, that we want to do is, man, really improve on how we do in run defense. Compare that with the pass defense. And for the past 2 weeks, we've done really well in that aspect, and we want to continue to do that. And going into the end of November, going to December, man, we want to be at peak performance when it comes to how we play. So we're trying to pair our run defense and our pass defense together, and make sure we're doing a good job of that. Last, I know the elephant's in the room about Anzalone. And listen, we're going to miss that player, right? But just like Hutch, listen, our guys are going to step up and they're going to do a good job. The one thing that we pride ourselves on this team is development as far as players. So there's not one linebacker in that room that hasn't played, and that's going to do a good job for us. So when Anzalone actually went out, man, there was no step back on how we operate. And Jack Campbell, Rodrigo, Ben Neiman, Zeke, all those guys did a really good job, and I expect them to move in that way going forward. So open up for questions.
Excuse me, Zeke, you kind of came out of nowhere for us. Yeah. Playing a little bit on defense, obviously contributing on special teams. Just what do you have?
Listen, the one thing that he does a really good job of, what he was known for, is his special teams performance. And then you look at the skill set and his ability to go out there and cover tight ends and cover backs, which we saw in practice what he did. And the good thing that we do is we have one-on-one situations. We have competitive periods, and that's when we actually saw that. And when you see that, man, you can see you could utilize that player in certain situations. So that's what we try to do with him.
Richardson's even bigger, but Justin Fields, you've seen that type of quarterback, that big-bodied, strong, really fast QB. What can your experiences, coaching against Justin Fields, how can that help prepare for this player?
Well, the number one thing that we talked about as a defensive staff and with the players is discipline has to be on high alert this week because of the nature of the offense. Every play has a run-pass option in it, so our eyes have to be in the right place on every snap, and then our ability to get the ball down has to be important. One thing they do a good job, they get a hat for the most part. So we have to do the little things better than they do. When I say that, it means once they get a hat for a hat, we got to get off blocks and we got to finish on the ball. And they do a good job of getting a hat for a hat. So, again, that comes down to how we operate and the way that we play. And you're right, Justin Fields gave us a test on being able to do that. So the thing is, everybody has to be in their right spot, and our guys are ready to take that challenge on.
I recognize I might run into a wall here with being too aggressive with schematics on the question, but with a quarterback that's that mobile, you say the run-pass option. I'm just wondering from a cornerback perspective, like man versus zone, is it better to have eyes in the backfield for your corners? Do you almost have to play more zone against guys that are a threat to run like that all the time?
Well, I'm not going to sit there and tell you exactly what we're going to do. We're going to play defense. And whatever that is, you'll see it. And we're going to do a really good job at it.
Broderick Martin got activated this week. Just curious what you've seen from his development, his growth, and where he's at right now.
Well, the first thing, he was Scout Team Player of the Week, so that's where it starts. And I say this about every player on our team, is you got to earn your keep here. And he's earning it by getting Scout Team Player of the Week. So as he continues to move forward, listen, we don't want to just throw that player out there. We want to continue to get him to practice, and he's doing a good job of that. And once he gets to the point where we feel like he's ready to go out there and compete on game day, we'll get him up and get him ready.
What did he do to stand out to win Scout Team Player of the Week?
When you go against a man like Ragnow and you see it on tape, that's easy to figure out. He did a good job of that.
You interviewed with the Colts a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there anything from that process or knowing the players, studying them, that can help you now in this game planning thing? It's probably a lot of different faces, but I don't know.
It is different faces. Systems totally different. Asking these guys to do something totally different. But I'll tell you what, just watching these guys now, I think the head coach is doing a really good job, right, offensively, of getting those guys in good position. Listen, he has a juggernaut at a quarterback position, and man, just to see how big he is and the way he challenges people. And when I say challenge people, it's, listen, if you're in his way, he's going to try to run over you. And his arm is lively. And I don't know, guys might have seen it, but the way he's got his minus 30 and he throws it 70 yards on one foot was really, really impressive. And I think that's one thing that's underrated about this quarterback, his ability to be accurate down the field. So we got to do a really good job of making sure we're on our P's and Q's, of breaking on the ball, because if you don't break at the right time, the ball is getting there because there's so much velocity on the ball.
How much of a luxury is it to have a guy like Malcolm that can step in whenever you need him?
Well, that's what I've been talking about each week in that linebacker room, and I continue to say that all those guys have played, all those guys deserve to play, and each week we try to put them in packages so they can play. So when one guy goes down in that room, listen, the next guy's going to step up.
You had some impersonators in the crowd last week. Did you catch wind of that? Some fans dressed as you, looking like you?
Listen, guys, this is getting out of hand again. You know what? My daughter sent that, and I think it's actually funny to be able to see that. So I got a kick out of that. So it was good. It was good. Actually pretty good. The one thing I did see that my wife actually mentioned is they have the yellow striping on the glasses, so they were very detailed. So I'm sure they can come and help us how detailed that was.
It's a pretty dynamic receiving core over there. It's just
Yeah.
what do you see from those three guys mainly?
Say it one more time.
What do you see just mainly from like that top trio, Mitchell, and then
Listen, they all create something different when you look at those guys. Pierce does a really good job, like his 50-50 ball, him being able to go up and get the ball is pretty incredible. Pittman does a really good job on the underneath routes, and when he gets a chance to go and block, he does a really good job. And they use him quite a bit. And I think that's one of the things that helps them as far as their run game when it comes to this running back is Pittman's ability to block. And Downs is the type of guy that can get in and out of his cuts. He's a chain mover, so all guys know that there's a challenge for them. But I think that we have guys that can match up well with those guys. So they're looking forward to this. And they see the same thing you guys see. I mean, this is a good receiving core where the quarterback can get the ball to them. So we're going to be challenged, but our guys be ready.
Just first time having on the field last week.
Personality out of this world, energy out of this world. He really fits who we are when it just comes to us as a team and really us as a defense. He does have violence to him. He does have a physical nature to him. We're excited to get his count up and see what actually he's going to do as far as a true edge defender for us this week.
He was a big contributor in some of those pass rush games you guys
Yeah.
are doing up front. Is that a specialty of some guys and of him in particular? Is that
Well, that's the one thing that he did a really good job of in Cleveland is his ability to rush from the inside. So we're going to continue to put him there. We're going to put him in some other spots now to see what he can do for us.
You're number one in the NFL on third down defense.
Say it one more time.
You're number one in the NFL on third down defense.
Yeah.
How much of that is set up by what you're talking about, stopping the run, which leaves them in second and long, third and long, theoretically?
That's exactly what we try to do on defense. Anytime we could have first down efficiency, then end up playing a second down to where we're forcing them to do something that we know that they're going to do. I guess you could say second and pass. That puts us in an advantageous situation. So anytime you can get a team in third and long, all right, man, we can pin our heads back and get after the quarterback. And then our guys love to play man coverage. Then we put ourselves in a situation where we can dictate. So that's what we try to do every week. You know, how many times we can get a team in third and longer situation so now we can rush the passer, we can play man coverage, and we can dictate the situation.
You have a game like that you had this past Sunday where after that first drive, you're getting off the field quick.
Yeah.
And then your offense is scoring. How much does that complementary football just change that game? It's 28-3 when you look up.
Well, that's the nature of the game. And that's something that our head coach talks about all the time. We always want to play complementary football. And that involves special teams also, as far as pinning teams back. So our punter does a really good job in that aspect. Jake does a really good job with his kickoff. So if you can do that without your team, man, there's a good chance you can have a good outcome of a game.
Zadarius Harris's hands are so good.
I told you that last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It seems like it's tough for offensive linemen to really latch onto him or hold on to him for long. How much of that skill set is he able to, help teach some of your younger guys to, help them grow as well?
Well, that's his superpower. And the one thing I talked about last week, man, how violent his hands are. And you really never get to know that until you get up to a person and really see it. So, again, Dan does a really good job of having these one-on-one competitive periods. And we had those, O against D, or O-line against D-line. And when I first saw it, I was like, whoa. I mean, you saw it. And listen, he's going to impart anything that he has that he can help the young guys. I mean, you saw it the week he didn't play with Pascal. He was in there coaching him. And he does that on an everyday basis. So, when you have a guy of that magnitude that's willing to take what he has and give it to somebody else, it's always a good thing. And he wants to do that anyway.
Terry on in a minute, just a little over halfway through his
Why
rookie
not?
season. Yeah, I mean, that's probably why I wanted to see what you thought of how he's grown, I guess, at that position and maybe where he still has room.
Listen, he's improving every week. The one thing that we want to make sure that he continued to improve on in practice was his ability to not grab and hold and things like that. Listen, he's a very aggressive player, and we play aggressively at the corner spot. And we knew some of those things were going to take a while for it to come out, and he's doing a good job. Listen, and it's going to happen again. I know that. He knows that, but he's gotten a lot better with his technique, and it shows up on the field.
How do the relationships in the secondary show up in week-to-week improvements? Just curious. It seems like a tight-knit group. Just curious how they push each other inside the secondary room each week.
Listen, they compete against each other, not just on stats, but who's going to get pointed out each week. These guys expect to get a game ball each week, and that's good to have in that group. Obviously, Kirby and BB does a good job of communicating, and they've improved with their communication. The corners do a really good job of saying, listen, my man is not going to catch the ball, and they keep that stat. Your guy caught 2 balls, my guy caught whatever. And I think that's good. I think it's healthy. And it's going to continue to happen with that group just because of the nature of who they are and how they operate. Those guys do a really good job during the week of talking through different situations and different route concepts and things like that, and how we're going to defend these route concepts. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Like on Thursdays when they're at one person's place and they're watching tape. Man, as a coach, you can't ask for anything more than that. You give them the concept, here's what we're trying to do. You make sure they understand the vision of where you're trying to go. Then you let those guys run with it. And then they start to ask questions on how we're going to do things. I think it's a beautiful thing.
All right. Great morning. How's it going? Great. Well, there's no questions. We didn't punt.
Another hit to the emergency long snapper room. I'm just curious what the plan is there.
We were wondering if that was going to come up here. So, no, probably Zylstra. Yep. Good question, though. First thing I thought of, too.
The shifting dynamics of guys you've needed to use on special teams. You have, I guess, elevated Houston into a bigger role here the last month, and then brought in Turner, who's got a resume but also needs acclimation. What have those two guys been able to give you here in the last few weeks?
Yeah, no, it's been good. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is to play the best 11 guys out there at any time, and so then just kind of who is that, and that kind of moves and shifts throughout the year, and based off who you have available, what guys' roles are. Obviously losing Alex will shift some of that again. But in some of those shifts, like Houston's come in and played, and he's playing like 2 teams for us, kickoff return. Sometimes he plays punt return last week. He did a little bit of that for us, but so he's stepped in and done a nice job. But ultimately, that's kind of how this league goes. I mean, we're just looking at the board of, players that are injured or been injured throughout the year. And there's a lot of them, but that's really what this league's turned into. You got to be able to adjust and adapt, and the next guy's got to be able to come up and play. You got to develop guys on the back end of the roster while they're on your practice squad so that they're ready to go when their name gets called. So it'll be more of the same for us this week.
Your units have played really clean as far as penalties. There are some units that have like 4 times as many penalties. How do you, is it a focus? Is it,
Yeah.
how are you so effective?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a stat that I do take a lot of pride in. I would say traditionally we've been pretty good. I think here we've been pretty good. In my career, we've been pretty good. But there's been a couple of years that are not as good as I want them to be. But those are always the ones that stand out. Yeah, to answer your question, we do spend a lot of time on it. We watch every penalty. Well, I watch every penalty or every play from around the league, and then I'll pull out the penalties that I think apply to us on any given week based off the return scheme we're running or the coverage scheme we're running and positions that some of our players may find themselves in. And then we'll review those at the end of the week and just put ourselves in their shoes and try to learn from their mistake. So we spend a lot of time talking about it and coaching it and teaching it. I believe that penalties can be devastating to you, especially in the return game. And people probably don't talk about that enough, which is another thing, not to go back into statistics, but people don't tack on the penalties like on punts or punt returns, and they just talk about the net, and the net doesn't include a penalty. Or like last week, they had a false start, and that backed them up 5 yards before the play, so we got 5 yards of field position there on Jacksonville's punt team. And so there's some hidden yardage in there that never gets talked about on a lot of these plays. And in the return game, it can be devastating, especially when you're playing against a punter who hammers the ball down the field. If the guy hammers the ball down the field 55 yards and you have a holding call on a gunner outside wide, it's a 10-yard penalty, but it's not only a 10-yard penalty, it also negates any return. So it's an automatic 65-yard net. It shows up in the stat sheet as 55, but it really should be 65. So when you add those penalties into the equation, they can be huge. And if there's a 10-yard return, that penalty now is not 10 yards, it's 20-yard penalty. Obviously, if a team went out there and got 20-yard penalties every play, there'd be people irate, but they don't see them that way in this phase. So it's a great question and something we spend a lot of time on. And our players they're great about it. They're conscientious. They're trying to win. And that's really what it goes back to me is like there's some teams that play very aggressive on special teams and they go out there and they hold a lot. And because of it, they get some big plays. And people see the big plays, but they don't see the other stuff that comes with those plays. And to me, the goal is to win the game. And you do that as a team by playing together collectively and monitoring those hidden yards and all that stuff.
Khalil Dorsey the best gunner in the game. I'm just curious, what are the characteristics of a great gunner?
Yeah, I would say he is a great gunner, and we're fortunate to have him. I think the biggest thing at that position, if you had to have one thing, you got to have speed. Because ultimately you're going to get singled up a decent amount. I mean, if it's 4th and 3 or 2 or 1, it's a close game or you have a lead, you're definitely keeping 8 guys in the box probably. You're defending against the fake, so it's putting a guy a one-on-one situation outside wide. And if you got a punter who can hammer the ball down the field like we have with Fox, if that guy can just flat run, then he can run around a guy. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go through him, so you don't have to be strong. But if you have speed and strength and size, obviously that's better. But number one is speed, and then on top of that, if you have the speed, then you need a competitive mindset or skill set. I mean, those guys are usually ultra competitive guys. They live in the fast lane type guys. They're going for it. They're always on. They're competing. They hate losing. They want to make the tackle. They want to get to the ball. Speaking of that, these guys have a great one. Arguably the best wideout on special teams in the league in number 16. These guys have a really good group. So he's a great gunner out there wide. He runs a 4.44. Their other gunner on the other side, 31, Goodson or Godson, however you say his name, is a running back, runs 4.44. These guys have linebackers. I think all of them run 4.50 or better. Speed in special teams can be big because a lot of these plays are just long area plays. You're covering 40 yards, and if they can run around you. So if you can't run with them, then you're in trouble. So these guys are a really good group. They're number 41's a hair on fire player, man. This guy is relentless. He's got a great story. I read it this summer. There's a great article about him. But just a great player, and I got a lot of respect for. Like I said, their corners are fast, their safeties are fast. These guys are good, so we got our hands full.
One of the hallmarks, I guess, of you and Campbell's special teams philosophies is putting stress on the opponents. I think last year you had touchback rate closer to 2/3. This year it's closer to 80%. This new return was meant to bring more returns to the game. At what point do we maybe consider that this isn't working the way it was intended and needs to be revamped again?
Yeah, I think we're on the right track. Bottom line is some of it comes down to a risk reward right now, and if the reward's a couple yards or 2 yards or 3 yards, you got a good football team. But the risk is taking a shot and some kind of explosive play against you. Then it's like, is it worth it for us in this situation right now? You got a big lead. Is it worth giving them another chance to try to make a play? So there's a lot of things that go into it. Obviously, we're going to go outdoors a couple weeks from now. We're going to be in Chicago. We go to San Francisco in the playoffs. We could be outdoors. So you got to obviously be ready to cover these things. And we spent a lot of time on it and made a lot of adjustments during the year. We had 2 in the last game there. So we'll just kind of keep balancing that risk and reward out and trying to make good decisions. But I think overall, I do think that there's a lot of positives about the play. It's been safe. I think it's been a lot safer. I don't have the data, but from what I understand, it's been a lot safer. They are getting some more returns. I think that they'll make some modifications based off, they're getting a lot of information and data so that they can make really some good decisions at the end of this year, which they really couldn't do last year. I mean, they didn't know how it was going to look. So there's kind of at least a baseline. They've set that on the play and given them a chance to move forward with it. I think there's a lot of positives. It's not perfect, but I think it's a really good start.
You're obviously very focused right now on the season and you can't worry about rule change, but what does that process look for you? Is that after the season, and do you make your opinions known to the competition committee or whoever's making these decisions?
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I don't have all the answers yet either. We're still gathering information and data. I think there's still stuff out there. I think as the weather changes and the ball doesn't travel as far down on kickoffs and you see shorter kicks, what does that do to it? As the field gets a little bit like our game in Green Bay, the field's not quite as much traction, you're not able to play as loose and as fast and on the edge of your cleats, and so that slows guys down, and the return game looks a little different in those situations. So I think there's a lot of variables still out there that we'll see, but at the end of the year, if they ask me, I'll definitely share my opinions and thoughts on the play.
I imagine you had those conversations now, but I wanted to ask about Zeke Turner. I think he was your personal protector 2 weeks ago. Who knows, last week since you didn't punt. But what went into that decision? What do you like about him?
Number one, I would say, obviously, it's a great job by Brad and Holmes and those guys in the personnel department of finding him and getting him. He's a player that I've respected for a long time. When I was in Philly, he was in Arizona. We played against each other a handful of games. I always thought he was a very good player. But even better than that for us was actually just the fit. I mean, he really has a very similar game to Jalen Reeves-Maben, and they both played personal protector. They actually both played in the same punt system. Us in Arizona kind of use the same terminology system. Very similar in that regard. They are also very aggressive with the fakes and all that stuff, so he has experience doing all that for them. And just the way he covers, the way he plays the game is very similar to Jalen Reeves-Maben. So it was like just a natural slide in and fit. So it was an easy decision for us. He's super smart and intelligent. I got a lot of confidence and faith and trust in him already in a very short period of time. The special teams coach from Arizona sent me a text message and just said, I don't know if I trust another guy more than I trust him. So, and that's a guy I respect quite a bit. So anyway, we feel good about him. Him or Jerome, we'll find out.
I ask you, well aware that you take these things seriously, but have you ever been around a better holder than Jack Fox? And what about that is he so good at in particular? Yeah,
so my favorite part about the story for him and holding is it's great to hear you say that, and I do think the guy's incredible, but when I first got here, he was not, and I wasn't shy about saying that either, and he's done just an outstanding job of working at it. I will also say one more time that the snapper is key in the whole thing. And when the guy rips the ball back there, like our guy does, and it's a tight spiral, very, very catchable ball with a lot of velocity and gets in your hand quick and just sticks. I think it's like a good quarterback. Some of these guys, the way they throw the ball, man, it just tends to stick in these guys' hands. So the way he throws the ball there, Hogan, back there to Fox really helps, obviously. So it gets back there quick. But then he's sure-handed. He gets the ball down on the ground quick. He does the same thing every time. His hands aren't erratic. They're nice and fluid and smooth. He gets the laces right when they're not right. And then there's a lot going into the tilt and the lean of the ball, too. So tilted forward or backwards and then leaning, towards him or away from him. And so he really does a great job of getting all that stuff right and down and set, and that really helps the kicker tremendously.
A lot of work that is going on with Jake. Maybe we haven't seen some of it yet, but on the different type of kickoffs that you may ask for, line drives into the landing zone, dropping it 1 yard deep, dropping it 9 yards deep, just the different things that may ultimately come up down the line.
Yeah, so it's a great question because really, so our kind of philosophy going into this season was, there's this kickoff play and you would love to be able to do a lot of different kicks. However, we got this young kicker who's new to this whole thing and he's trying to develop and improve. And it's for us, like, where do we want to put his focus and emphasis? I know this, in order to stay in this league, if you're a kicker, you better kick your field goals well. He has a huge leg, so I would say early in the year, our focus was, okay, let's just focus on kicking our field goals and making kicks and improving in that part of the game and not try to do everything all at once. Let's get to first base first, then we'll worry about getting to second. So our approach with him has really been, let's focus on the field goals and the kicking, and we'll just use your talent. And you got a big leg, we'll just use your talent and let you do that, and we won't worry about trying to be the best that we can be at everything right now. And then as we've gone through the year, it's like, okay, in the background now, let's work on some of these kicks. Let's work to the right, let's work to the left, let's see if we can hit one on the ground. And so that stuff's all kind of going on behind the scenes, really, and developing him slowly throughout the year and adding more on his plate as he's improved and the first part of his job's become easier for him.
Is that line drive kick into the landing zone, making sure you don't hit before the 20, but you hit between the 20 and the goal line, is that a tough kick?
Yeah, so I think if you looked at the data, and not that I'm a data guy, we went over that last week. But if you do look at some of the data, or you look at the right way, no, I'm just kidding. If you look at the information that's out there, I think that when the ball's on the ground, it ends up being the best result for the cover team. So if you can get it on the ground, the problem is getting it on the ground consistently is much harder than it looks, and not hitting it short of the landing zone is much harder than it looks for these guys. And doing it under pressure over and over in the elements, weather, and everything else that could be out there is not easy. But I think over time, you're going to see all these guys start to develop more and more of that the more they practice it. Appreciate it.
Listen, that was a fun one last week. Guys came out and played their tails off. They really responded to that Houston game where we didn't put our best out there. So was proud of them. A number of guys had winning performances. I thought the O-line played some of the best football, not just this year, but over the last few years. That was really fun to see. And then a lot of our skill guys got involved as well. So turning the page already here. Good opponent this week that has a lot of similarities to that Houston defense that we struggled with a couple weeks ago. So Coach Bradley coaches them hard, and they play really, really hard. They've got playmakers up front, second level, and in the secondary as well. So we'll have our work cut out for us.
You've built trust with Jameson over the last 2 seasons. Can you contextualize like how much he opens up the offense and the playbook for you?
Yeah, I think a great example was his touchdown there last week. I've got this bad habit right now of calling that particular pass concept into cover 2, and it's usually a dead play when I do that, and he makes it work. So, no, I mean, there's a number of things, and it's certainly him, but there's a number of other players. Gibby's another one where they're erasers, they're fixers. You know, if things aren't quite right, they make it right. And And he has certainly given us that element in the passing game, and I think defenses take notice of that.
Is it just the extraordinary speed of those two guys that makes things right?
I think that's a large part of it. I think they got great instincts of how to make people miss in the open field, and I think you find defenders take poor angles when trying to bring them down in space as well. So I think that's a great element that they bring to the table, no doubt.
Who's faster, J-Mo or Gibbs?
Ooh, depends on who you ask. Yeah. I know where I put my money, but I'm not going to say that publicly. Gibbs does? Yeah. I saw the one from the game. Was that Monday night that the Turpin took it? Was that the fastest of the year? It's up there. Yeah, that's pretty good.
So this is similar to Texas. Schematically, is that what you're talking about, their defense? Or what?
Yeah. Listen, 4 down front, that's an attacking, penetrating style, not a huge pressure operation per se, or at least that's not what they've been over the last couple of years. They mix in some pressures, of course, on base downs and third downs, but they generate pressure. They stop the run with their front 4, and then they've got linebackers that fly sideline to sideline. So if you're not taking the right angle, either off your double team or as you're going through to the second level, then they'll knife through and make a tackle for loss. The 2 defensive tackles are probably the best pair we've seen so far this year. And 44, I think he's their green dot. You can tell he's playing with a lot of confidence right now. And then I have a lot of respect for their nickel, 23. When he comes inside, he's feisty. We got to account for him in the run game, and he's a heck of a coverage player as well. I remember him distinctly from when we had him in training camp a couple years ago. So they've got some playmakers throughout, and a little bit simpler schematically, but they play hard in a high-intensity group.
Doing some pre-snap shells that look different than I think we usually see in the NFL with the 3 deep there, maybe more college concepts. Are you seeing some unique stuff across the NFL this year, maybe stuff imported from the college game, and is it in any way specific to what you're seeing as the Lions? Yeah,
I don't, I probably haven't given that a ton of thought, whether it's being imported from college. I'm sure there certainly are influences as coaches come up, as players come up from that level that show up. I felt that a few years ago when Phil Snow came from Baylor to Carolina. That was certainly the most I've truly felt that. But yeah, each team has a flavor. There's just, I feel like, more volume of defense right now. Teams are doing more than what they used to in the past, and they're doing it all at a high level.
Obviously, we can see the big touchdowns or different plays. How much do you think you've improved from game 1 to now in like the tiny things, like the missed assignments or the individual decision making or all those things we don't know? Yeah, no,
I think certainly the passing game usually takes the longest to gel from the start of the season until this point, and I think you see a lot of trust between Jared and his pass catchers, and that's just, you've got 6 weeks called in training camp, 4 to 6 weeks to get that down, and now we've got another 8 to 10 to add on to it, and so he's got a lot of confidence in where those guys are going to be. There's routes that we haven't necessarily practiced in a couple weeks that we feel good dusting off just because we have a lot of time on task. So I think it's the trust, the timing, the anticipation that Jared has with his pass catchers. Something we've always talked about up front is our wide zone scheme normally takes a few weeks. It takes to about mid-season before it starts clicking. I haven't felt that this year, and I think that's because we have 2 backs that experienced it all a year ago, and then we have an experienced group up front as well. So it felt like we picked up where we left off at the end of last year in terms of our running game. It's been our passing game that's really made some strides in terms of the details.
Pulling your starters from games recently, 3 times in the last 6 games or whatever it was, Hendon hasn't gotten a ton of chances to throw the ball. I guess just how much value do you find in those little experiences for him when it's just like a
I think it's invaluable for him. Going out there, you got the lights shining on you, you got people looking at you. It's not practice setting. He had a ton of reps there during training camp and the preseason games that you saw growth from game 1 to game 3. And now we're at a spot where he's been able to get a few in games this year. And the challenge for me is I do want to get him some passes, but also don't want to be disrespectful to the opponent as well. So it's kind of a balancing act when it comes to that.
What makes a good NFL center in your eyes, and how does Frank sort of embody whatever those characteristics you've got?
Oh, shoot. I think it starts with being an elite communicator, and he's just that. He's able to identify fronts. I think Tanner used the word PhD level is where he's at this point. We had a good chuckle upstairs over that one, but he's not wrong. He's 100% right. Frank in particular, he can come up and he sees the big picture. He anticipates where the pressure's coming from, and 99% of the time, make sure that we're accounted for. So I think when you're talking about the best centers in the league, I think they can identify and make sure the whole blocking unit is on the same page, whether it's in the run game or in pass pro. And then what he brings to the table that's unique is he can run in space, all right, which we ask him to do a little bit, but he is so strong at the point of attack that some of these big nose guards that we face, they don't move him off the spot at all or push him into the backfield. So when they try to push the pocket, he does a great job maintaining the integrity, but at the same time in the run game, when we're trying to get our gap schemes going, he can put a knife in the defense and we can hit it front side.
Just because we haven't seen him practice, just based on the time of the year. Christian Mahogany, it's been full go here for a few weeks now. I'm just curious what you've seen from his development, from the guy you scouted.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing that coach does for practice to help develop some of these guys is he still maintains one-on-ones over the course of the week. Good versus good, young guys versus young guys, whatever that is. And so you've really been able to see, since he's come off of IR, you've seen Christian grow immensely. And I really wish, we as a staff really wish he would have been available there in the preseason, because those would have been huge games to really get a gauge for where he's at right now. And it's a little bit harder in practice. Sometimes we have pads on, sometimes we don't. But from the one-on-one aspect of pass pro and run blocking, you see flashes of immense potential right there. So we'll continue to try to find where we can slip him in to get him more experience. But he's a guy that we have high hopes for.
Did those guys fill you in on some of the touchdown celebrations in their head, or are you kind of watching that live?
I watch that. I hear about it from my kids when I get home. Yeah, they really like the one. Did you see Saint on his head a couple weeks ago? That was the one I heard a lot about. So, no, I try to share them a celebration. They haven't done it yet. They don't. Yeah, well, that's hopefully coming down the pipe at some point. I'm on St. Brown about that. He's the guru.
So. Play the official drew up for you a couple years back, still in the can. Have you used it yet?
Not yet, but we've got it. We have not repped it, but it's in there. It's churning. We've got. Thank you.